Tehuti Ma'at, bringing you truth. I'm Aust NeferKa, aka Nef. So, welcome. I am just coming on here because I want to talk about the very significant energy cycle that we're moving through. I know that many people are familiar with the Lionsgate portal, as it's called. And what I want to do is really root us and ground us, because I think a lot of people get caught in the mysticism. This is a very, very, very significant cosmological energy portal. Now, when you say something like an energy portal, I feel like sometimes we get caught up in the mysticism of it and we're not actually grounding the energy. And that's very important, right? Because with a lot of spirituality right now, we have the new age space, we have a lot of religious indoctrination, we have a lot of different stains that may be unconscious to us in terms of how we're interpreting things. So I just see this tendency to go into that escapism and just get caught up in the mysticism. And true holistic spirituality, as I'm going to begin to cover in my Ka series, the Kemetic Astral, taking us back to our ancient African origins of pretty much all of the major Western religions, but pretty much most of the other traditions that have come forward and are kind of like this crazy mashup in the new age spirituality. So grounding, rooting, I should say, is very important. Grounding is great, but we're talking about really rooting things because we're going to the origins. Now, the great thing about the cosmology is we're dealing with ancient mythology, but we're dealing with geology, we're dealing with just practical sciences as well, right? Because ancient Kemetic, what most people know as ancient Egyptian, but going back to our ancient roots and using the Medu Neter, right? The language of our ancestors, Kemet. So that land in the Hapi Valley, what many people know as the Nile Valley, is very significant. And Hapi, which is the ancient name of the river that we know as the Nile, is very significant to this Sekhmet's portal. Now, when I'm using the word Sekhmet instead of the Lion's Gate, it's because Sekhmet is the embodiment, or I should say the energy force of nature that is expressed through the Lion's Gate. So in most European astrology, like what we know, for example, with the Greek zodiac, we know about Leo, the lion. So the equivalent to that and the origins of that is Sekhmet, the lioness. And Sekhmet is the energy that our ancestors depicted as aligning with the nature of the lioness, but we're talking about forces of nature. We're talking about universal forces and energies that are indwelling within us, that are permeating throughout the universe, right? So it's all symbolism. And I think that that part is very important, because a lot of people interpret things very literally. Even when we look at religious texts today that have a lot of allegory and a lot of mythology, those stories are taken in a very literal context, and that can stifle our ability to actually take the value from the truth that's within these sacred texts that were taken from the original sacred texts, which is a whole nother story. But for right now, we want to focus on Sekhmet, the lioness energy. So there's a whole beautiful mythology around Sekhmet, but essentially we think of the lioness, we think of the huntress. I think that the fact that not all species have the female in that position to be the hunter. So the lioness is an expression of the divine feminine in its fierceness, in its ferociousness, really. Because in the mythology, Sekhmet was sent by Ra, the sun, or the solar energy, the creative force of the universe, with a vengeance. And she's bloodthirsty, and she literally starts devouring the people who are destroying and out of alignment with Neter, with the divine. and it gets to a point where she has to get stopped because she's like pretty much slaughtering, killing everybody, right? So it's like the wrath of Sekhmet is a thing, right? But Sekhmet is the lioness, and there's that prowess to the feline energy. There's that sensuality to the feline energy. But she's actually that aspect of it that gets real hot, right? She's August. So this energy, it's feminine, so it's receptive. It's not that it's actually female, right? So men can also embody the energy of Sekhmet in that same receptive ferociousness. Honestly, lust is the energy of Sekhmet, right? So lust, it's also desire, she's passion. So we think about all the things that we think of when we think of that fire, that hot, like fire. So that's Sekhmet energy. There are other not lioness, but there are actually other lioness entities, or I should say forces. Yet I meant to say that there are other feline energies to look at as well. But I wanted to root us in Sekhmet because this portal, the association with the sun being in Sekhmet in Leo, is very significant. We also have Heteru, which is Venus, in Leo in Sekhmet as well, and it's retrograde. So this is a very significant moment that we're in right now. So this portal is very powerful. Now, two common misconceptions about the Lion's Gate, right? Sekhmet's portal, is that it's only on August 8th, right? 8/8. Because for those who don't know, 8/8 is what people associate with the Lion's Gate, okay? Now, the misconception is why I think the astronomy is very important, because what the Lion's Gate is actually celebrating, and what the ancient ancestors celebrated, what we actually were honoring, was the heliacal rising of Sirius, or what we should call Septet in the ancient language, or Sabu Septa, right? Because even to this day, the tradition is carried and continued through, I would say, primarily the Dogon people of Mali. So I think it's beautiful to see how the legacy of Kemet has continued. Now, we can see that in so many intrinsic cultural aspects of African people around the world. However, the Dogon still carrying a lot of those traditions. The mask ceremonies and rituals, the Sigi festival that they still do to this day, which honors the binary star system that we call Sirius. Now, Sirius is the brightest star of our sky, but beautifully enough, like I said, it's a binary star system. So you have Sirius A and Sirius B. Sirius A is the primary star that can be seen, but there's Sirius B that also is in orbit and it's a dwarf star. So it's a heavier, denser, smaller star system. And even, Western scientists were blown away at the fact that the Dogon even knew it existed hundreds of years before the telescopes and the technology that is currently being utilized to connect with the stars. Couldn't even see it. So it was like obviously with these interpretations of, beautiful personification and mythology that we've had throughout the ancient world, particularly in Africa, that wasn't respected, right? We were seen as, savages, don't have any, backwards. We were indoctrinated into this linear evolutionary ideology, taken away from our revolutionary ideology, right? Our holistic thinking, our cyclical cosmic thinking, and we were programmed to see things as evolving in a linear context. So it was seen that the technology could only progress and get better. We didn't see how things actually spiral, and they go up and then they come down, they crash and go back around. So while we may think we're going up in a linear context with technology, I would argue that we're actually on the decline, and it's an expression of the degeneracy of humanity, the disconnect, the fact that we would be destroying our ecosystem in order to have technologies built upon that decay and exploitation. But I'll digress. What I want to say about Sirius is that there's a 60-year orbit of Sirius A and Sirius B. And every 60 years, the Dogon people actually celebrate the Sigi festival and celebration. So a lot of those mass ceremonies are very reminiscent of ancient Kemet, because when you look at the temple walls, and people usually see these depictions that they say are gods and goddesses that are actually just natural forces and principles that we personified and beautifully, artistically, creatively expressed and carved into stone, it's interpreted as their deities. And that thinking is very limiting, and it's not accurate at all, right? It's difficult to take a Eurocentric perspective on an African tradition, right? So it's very important to recognize that they're not deities. They are natural forces and principles. So these are energies that exist in the universe, that exist within us. It's nothing outside of us. They weren't worshipped in the way that we're taught to think, right? Now you can celebrate, you can uplift a particular energy, which usually that was done, and temples and monuments were erected in honor of certain principles because of the actual astronomical events, because the astrology, because of the connection to it, because we dealt with things holistically. So the temple was the university, right? And this is the same universities that the Greeks and the Romans and other Europeans were learning at, right? So when we talk about the foundations of civilization, I think it's very important for us to go to the root, right? So this is very significant when it comes to the Lion's Gate, because that heliacal rising of Sirius, which is the first time you can actually see the star with your bare eyes, right, without needing binoculars, that's what marks the heliacal rising of Sirius. Now, when this star system is becoming present, it's a signal from the natural world of the inundation of the Hapi. And the Hapi is the Nile River, right? So the Hapi was a Neteru, right? A divine principle that was literally the Nile. Now, what it represents symbolically is overflow, because that is what actually provided us with civilization as we know it today. That inundation, that overflow, that flooding of the Hapi is what allowed the ancestors to begin to farm and cultivate the land and be able to stay in one place and then develop and study and observe the various sciences, mathematics, and all of the things that we have today. So it's very significant. So that what they call the dog days, right, is because that Sirius star system is in the constellation known as the dog star, Canis Major, right? So that is Septet, or Sirius as we know it. Now, Septet is associated with Aust. This is the divine feminine principle, or Neteru, divine feminine force, the mother force, but in her cosmic context, not in her terrestrial context. So we had terrestrial explanations of this energy, such as the Immaculate Conception of Aust, right? Because Septet is Aust, or what many people know as Isis. So Aust was the first Immaculate Conception, right? What we get today as the Virgin Mary, right? The virgin birth. Now, within all of those mythologies that we have, which if you're interested in learning more about these, I really encourage you, if you are of African descent and you want to be part of our movement and the growth that we're creating within our community, that you join Tehuti Ma'at, because we go deeper into the mythologies. I think that these prophecies are very significant because they allow us to connect in a way that is deepening our spirituality, because it's actually connecting us to these archetypes for us to prototype them. That's the point. It's not just to have these stories and these prophecies, but what do they actually mean, being able to interpret them and apply them to our lives. The reason why they were described in this way is because they protect us. They protect the sanctity, the sacredness of the tradition. So everyone can't just go ahead and grasp it. So there's certain aspects that I'm not going to fully elaborate on here, but many people are familiar with the mythology of Aust and Asar and how they were the first rulers or leaders of Kemet. They taught the people how to farm. So they brought agriculture to the people. And Set, his brother, was jealous, kills his brother, chops his body into 14 pieces, scatters them. Aust and Nebetet, her sister, Set's wife, come together to put together the pieces of his body. This ritual is done, and Aust says the words of power, and Asar resurrects and his spirit impregnates her, and she gives birth, right? So this is where we get the idea of that virgin birth, because they had not consecrated their marriage. Now, in our tradition, it doesn't say that she was a virgin. However, they had not consecrated their marriage. They had no children. So she gives birth to their child, Heru, and Heru has to go, and when he's older, he avenges his father's death, and he goes to battle with his uncle Set to take his rightful place at the throne. All of this symbolism means something. Now, this is what Sirius or Septet, right? What the Lion's Gate is actually based on. So this is very significant because we're talking about a resurrection process. We're talking about rebirth. We're talking about ego death. We're talking about transformation, transmutation. We're talking about regeneration. There's constant cycles of opportunity for us to rebirth ourselves. And this is a major window. That's why we call it Black August. Black August is a very powerful month or moon cycle within the revolution, within the year. But literally within the revolution, right? When we look at the Black world, Black studies, Black history, I mean, Nat Turner's rebellion, like there's so many significant things that happened during Black August. This is what we're talking about. So when they talk about those dog days, we're talking about the end of July through mid-August. And I want to say it's going to move us. This is a very significant one because I'm honestly going to say it's going to move us through to September 4th because that's when Heteru, or the energy sphere that we know as Venus, stations direct, because they're all in this, it's in the same energy as the sun right now. So this is very significant energy. Now, I know some of this may seem like, depending on where you are in your journey and how much knowledge you already have, it may seem a little over your head. But I think if you already have some degree of introduction to the Lion's Gate and you know about the energy portals, the numerology and things, you'll be aware of it. But I wanted to state that because it's not just 8-8. 8 is very significant because of the numerology. We're talking about the tapping into eternity, our ability to time travel, right? Move through the spiral of eternity, because the 8 signifies or symbolizes eternity, right? So that double 8 is very significant because it's opening us up to pure potential. So it's a very significant moment. All the messages that come through your dream state are things you want to give attention to. The things that you feel and sense, your intuition, the connections that align, all of that are very significant. And because, as I said, Heteru, who is Venus, the energy of magnetism, the energy of attraction, the energy of value, of material pleasure, this energy is also in this energy cycle, and it's retrograde. So there's a lot of reflection, there's a lot of rewriting, a lot of heart healing happening right now. So all of this it's just such a beautiful moment, right? Because it's really emphasized, it's like this overlay of emphasis on love, right? And the ancient word that we have for love is myrrh. And myrrh was symbolized by a plow. Coming back to our agricultural symbolism. The plow that plows the land, signifying that love or myrrh is hard work and dedication, right? Plowing land is the hardest labor that we have. Trust me. We're actually in the midst of our rain season, which is our inundation. So I think that that's very significant here where I am right now, that aligning with this Lion's Gate, even though it's associated with the Hapi or the Nile River flooding and bringing that agricultural season, here in Cabo Verde, it is actually signifying the rain clouds and the rain season that is going to bring our agricultural season into initiation. So we've just sown the land. It's a very beautiful time right now. Storm clouds are gathering, and it's beautiful as well because these storm clouds, for those who don't know, what they call the Cape Verde hurricanes actually follow the Middle Passage. So as the eye of the storm conjures here, the location of where humanity's greatest wound that is still unhealed, right? The enslavement of our ancestors. It's a very critical point because all of our ancestors who were kidnapped and taken from different parts of the continent were brought here to Cabo Verde to be traded because the Portuguese colonized here, these islands, and they set up the base here, and they were the ones who initiated the trafficking of our enslaved ancestors. So the fact that the storms literally follow the same track of the Middle Passage that the boats took and bring those hurricanes that hit hard over in the west is very significant. So these are a lot. It's a potent energy. I know I've shared a lot of different elements and aspects of it, but I think that they're all very significant to this energy. Now, going back into Hapi, right? What I was talking about with the Nile River, because it was also nature's way of speaking to us and connecting us to the inundation, the flood of the Nile, to initiate the agricultural season. It also is significant to know that Hapi is what is translated through the Greeks as Aquarius. And many may know, if you're familiar with the Lionsgate in your hair, then I'm sure you know that we are in the age of Hapi, the age of Aquarius. So what does that mean? Especially in association with this particular energy cycle that we go through every revolution. Now, the Hapi, which is known, even though it's an air sign, it's the water bearer. It's all about the current of energy, right? It's about currency. It's about the economics, right? Like I said, the agriculture is the root of the economics, because economics is not actually about banks and debit cards and you know, different dollars, yen, right? Different currencies. It's the currency of energy. So we're talking about what we actually need: food, clothing, shelter, security, right? Energy, right? Water. These are the things that are actually the root of economics, of economy. And that's what Hapi represents, right? The water bearer, because water is really the ultimate technology on our planet. Well, if we really want to talk about real technology, right? So when we think about things from our own narrative, right, and we take that power to define and see things from that lens, we stand with more clarity and we stand in truth in order to actually stand in a position of power as we're in the age of transformation and revolution, because that's what Aquarius Hapi represents. Everything's going to change once that flood happens. But what the key is with Hapi energy, right, with economics, is you have to do the work. You have to dig the canals and channels and waterways as our ancestors did in order to guide those waters. So when the flood came, there were reserves, there were channels, there were currents that were flowing and bringing water to specific areas. So that's the significant message of Hapi, because Hapi is also the energy of, many people know, the humanitarian, but it's also the energy of the unique individual. So it's that beautiful balance of both and, because Hapi is not water itself, right? Because it's an air sign, but it's the water barrier, the one who brings the water, the one who carries the water. So it's actually the flow of the current. And the Hapi River, one of, if not the longest river on our planet, is the only river that flows from south to north. So from the heart, the core, that central African energy is channeled up, right? Or down, depending on how you're orienting, because ancestrally the calendar was actually oriented the other way around, right? So that's why usually if you see on certain, even in modern books, you'll see like Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt are upside down essentially when you're studying ancient Kemet in, history books and things like that. So that's something that some people may not know. The orientation is actually upside down. So Africa would actually be looked at like this. I actually have a pair of earrings that is like this. So that being said, I think I've pretty much covered everything I wanted to talk about with Septet or Sirius rising, and that being the Lion's Gate, this energy. Let me end with how you can actually practically prototype these archetypes. So I touched on a couple of different archetypes, so I'm going to just briefly go through each one. Sirius, Septet, Aust, right? My namesake. Connect to the land, connect to earth, sow some seeds if you can, or just earth yourself, get your feet in soil, meditate, stargaze, great ways to connect to the energy, and receive, right? Remember, these are feminine energies. So you want to be receptive, or you want to honor your emotions, you want to process where your heart space is. So that's one energy that I mentioned. It's also the great mother. So really connecting with your mother, where you're at with that energy, with that spirit of mother within yourself. How are you mothering yourself, whether you're a man or a woman, right? Because that's part of our healing process in this degenerate cycle is, none of us have had like the ideal situation in terms of our upbringing. It's been perfect because it's what we got and it's what we should be experiencing in our soul's continuum of our soul's journey. Yet we're in a degenerate cycle. So there's healing to be done. So we're learning to mother ourselves, father ourselves. And that's part of our healing process. So think about how you're mothering yourself, how you're nurturing yourself. Are you giving yourself grace, right? I think doing journaling is going to be really, really powerful during this portal. Just be clear on what it is that you want, what is coming through to you, what clarity you have from the growth that you have and who you are becoming, right? And what you're shedding. Just really taking inventory of where you are and having that knowledge of self, going inside to the depths, because as I said, that's the cosmic aspect of Aust, of the womb. So you're talking about going deep into the subconscious and just guiding yourself through that space. And don't be afraid. Like, just go wherever. You have to just trust yourself, trust your spirit. Your spirit already knows where to go. And it's usually the place that you're trying to avoid. You're trying to escape. Go there. Trust me. Nature, the universe wants you to grow. Doesn't want to bring you through pain. These are energies of pleasure. These are energies of joy. But we have to move through pain in order to get there. So that's where the treasure is. So going into those spaces. So using your journal to do that is a great way. Coming into Sekhmet, so the lioness energy. One way you can prototype this archetype is get clear on what the archetype actually represents. So I highly recommend watching some documentaries about lionesses, about lions, and how this particular aspect of this African species functions, seeing what the symbolism is of that and how that applies to yourself, how you can see guidance within that. But also I want you to tap into your passion, right? You can't tame the lioness, but you want to be aware of where you may be leaning into lust, where your sexual energy is, how you can channel your sexual creative energy and move it through your body, right? So move it up, because there's so much density right now that wants to keep us stuck and stagnant. So we have to do the work to move that energy up. So I highly recommend doing breath work. So any type of energy work that you can do to move the energy up, depending on where you are in your journey. You may already know some of those things. If not, then I always encourage people to go with their intuition. It's all about your intention. You have the power to move the energy. You have to just direct your attention there. Sometimes there's blockages there, but if you work through those blockages, right, those are just thoughts. There may be thoughts and things that you feel like come up when you put your attention into your sexual energy, into your sacral aritu or chakra, right? So arit is the ancient Kemetic interpretation of what we know in the Sanskrit as the chakras. So going into that Aritu, there's usually a lot of trauma there. There's usually a lot of pain there. There's usually a lot there. So take your time, be gentle with yourself, but be honest with yourself and go there. Channel that creative energy, move it up. Actually creating is the best way to prototype Sekhmet energy. Now, she's receptive. Remember, it is a feminine energy. So the ways that you can listen to what is in your heart, because she's also associated with the heart, right? Leo, Lioness, Sekhmet energy is all about the heart, the brave heart, the courageous heart. But remember, bravery and courage is in the face of fear. So I feel in this stage, the greatest way that it's being emphasized for us right now is through being true to ourselves, expressing our beauty, and being honest about what's in our hearts, right? Forgiveness, all of these things are associated with this heart space and this heart work that we can be doing. And then what other energy did I talk about? Happy. Happy, be of service. Find a way to be of service. If you're in New York City, you can volunteer at Tehuti Ma'at Community Garden. If you're anywhere else, find another community garden, right? Because then you'll be tapping into both energies, right? So you'll be able to be of service and ground yourself and earth yourself. Get your feet on the soil. Sow some seeds, right? Tend to some land. That would be a great way. If you can't do that, go to a park. Find another way to be of service. But being of service is a great way. It's also a great way to honor Aust energy, right? Which I said is associated with Septet. Now, in the terrestrial sense, Aust is also significant because Aust is Virgo. And currently right now in our energy cycle, during this Sekhmet portal, this Lion's Gate, we have Mercury and Mars, which is Tehuti and Heru, right? The energy of our warrior spirit and the energy of our intellect, our mind, our communicative, our cognitive abilities are both in Virgo, Ast energy. Ast is of service. Ast is also deeply analytical. She is the mother energy. She's very nurturing. So loving yourself, taking care of yourself through these ways that I'm saying, connecting with nature, listening to yourself, processing your emotions, all of that is the ways that you can work through it. And you see how you're embodying the energy, because our ability to embody the energy is as much as our capacity is to love ourselves. Because the higher frequency we're operating on, right, the greater we're treating our body. So as always, the way you honor the energy is take care of your body, heal yourself, do some slowing. What y'all call fasting, I call slowing. Eat less. Be silent, do different types of fasts. You can really find ways to just slow down certain systems in the body so that you can tune in and amplify your psychic abilities, your intuitive abilities and your intuitive sensitivities. So that's very, very important as well. So exercise always, especially with that Sekhmet energy, exercising, cardio, get that heart pumping, okay? That's how you connect with Ast energy. And then with Hapi, I'm also gonna say pour libations, pour water, watering plants. Great one right there. If you don't have a plant, this would be a great time to get a beautiful little house plant. And don't tell yourself no lies and no stories that you don't have no green thumb and you kill every plant that you touch. If you're one of those, that story ends right here. It's done. Connect with the plant. Don't just get the house plant to be this cute little fixture. You have to actually honor the life and the spirit of the plant. Learn it. Know what it needs so that you can offer it that. It's going to be dependent on you, and it's going to be a reflection of you, because any nature that surrounds us, whether it's in our neighborhood, whether it's on our land or in our house in a pot, it's a reflection of you. So usually when we're having that experience where the houseplant is dying, it's saying a lot, it's communicating something about the spirit, and you have to go into that. So I don't want to affirm that for anybody, but nurturing some plants, great way to connect with all of these energies, because honestly, they're just natural forces. So you need nature. You need to bring in the elements to connect with them. Hapi is also air energy. So I think purification, it's air and water. So spiritual baths, just submerging yourself in water, using some minerals in there, salts. You can put rose petals and just make it decadent, you know? Just rich, beautiful bath, and bringing smoke into it. You can also do smudging, cleansing. I highly recommend you do that with herbs that you actually are connected to, or that you can get from someone who's connected to them. If you're interested, you can go to coinsandcaries.com and you can get some of the herbs that we grow and dry and provide. So yeah, because I think a lot of people just tend to go towards sage or other things, and it's like in Palo Santo and things like that, which we have a blessed Palo Santo that is acquired sustainably. It's difficult to find Palo Santo that is grown sustainably because it has to just die naturally and then be harvested, and that's when it secretes the oils. But because it's become a commodity, unfortunately, same thing with sage, they're endangered. So you want to be conscientious of what you're getting. So I do highly encourage you, if you are looking for something like that, especially if you're going to use things in ritual, that you get things from people that you know where they're coming from, how they're being grown, and you can support Tehuti Ma'at. Why not? Support coinsandcaries.com. So I'll go ahead after I end this live stream and put those things into the description. But pretty much, I think I'm done here. I don't even know how to see if there were any messages or anything on here. I don't see anything. But if you're watching this on the replay, feel free to leave any comments if you like. And I will gladly answer any questions. It can also guide and direct what else is shared after this. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoy and maximize the potentials available during this Lionsgate, the Sekhmet portal. Tap into your inner lioness, right? And yeah, just take care of yourself. Be easy on yourself. Love up on yourself, and just honor your spirit. This is a great time to just tap into that divine feminine energy, right? Just that receptive energy, that pull energy, right? Just think of the magnetism, because even if you're a man, you know, you're in a male body, I want you to know that you can still honor that divine feminine, because a lot of my brothers are doing a lot of healing work right now, especially with the emotions. So honor those emotions, do them in a beautiful, balanced way, and without any shame, just allow yourself to just be full and be human. It's part of our experience. So yeah, just take care of yourself, nurture yourself, love up on yourself, mother yourself. That's the best way to maximize on the opportunity that is here. All right, you can sow your seeds, you can set your intentions as always, and just remember, it's your responsibility to move that energy. So it's not a matter of time, it's a matter of movement. All right, power, have a beautiful day.